Hi everyone. Last class we were discussing about various mechanical failures of FPD. This class I will continue with that mechanical failure, the last one, that is porcelain fracture. How the metal ceramic fracture happens, various causes, and how will you treat it. All these things I will cover in this class. The first cause for metal ceramic fracture is due to improper framework design. The framework will be designed by the technicians in laboratories. But as a doctor, you should be very well aware of the specifications of your framework, what you need. So you should know the thickness of your framework, you should know the shape of your framework, etc. If there is any sharp angle on your framework, which can lead to stress concentration of the ceramic, which in turn leads to the fracture of the ceramic. Now, the main another reason for ceramic fracture is due to the perforations or some holes on the framework, either if it is an FPD or crown. These holes can happen in many ways. Usually the metal ceramic restorations, the metal part is made up of two ways. That is the conventional way, that is lost wax technique. The another way is DMLS, that is laser sintering technique. In laser sintering techniques, the chances of getting a perforation is very low. But in case of metal usual conventional way, that is lost wax technique, the chances of getting perforation is much more higher. If the wax pattern is become very thin, there are chances of getting perforation on the metal framework. If the wax pattern become very thick, you will get a thick framework, which the technician has to trim it so that it get into the shape what we need. The thickness what we need depends on your case. For example, when you made a clearance of 2 mm, in that 1.5 mm should be for the ceramic and only 0.5 to 0.3 mm for the metal. For another case, if the clearance for the crown is 3 mm, in that the ceramic thickness should be constant. Ceramic thickness should be 1.5 mm and another 1.5 mm should be of metal, because you cannot vary the ceramic thickness according to the case, but you can vary the thickness of your metal copings, because if you vary the ceramic thickness, the ceramic will fail eventually. But if you vary the metal thickness, that is okay to an extent. So if you need a coping of 0.5 mm and the wax was almost 1 mm, you will get a coping of 1 mm. Then what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to trim it to 0.5 mm. When you trim it, there are more chances for perforations. When you get a perforation, what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to discard it and you are supposed to make a new one. If you made a ceramic over that perforated coping, that ceramic will eventually fail. When there are forces on that particular area, the entire ceramic on that area will collapse due to the lack of support from the metal. So that perforation should be avoided. And in clinically, how you can check the perforations? Because perforations means that there is no metal on that particular area. You can place the crown towards the light and look through the crown. If there is any perforations, you can see light passing through the crown. Such crowns has to be replaced without cementation. You can send it back to the laboratory saying there is perforation on the metal framework, so they have to replace it. You are not supposed to cement it. Then in case of facing crowns, facing crowns are the crowns with ceramic on the labial or buccal aspect and metal on the other side. But there will be a junction of metal and ceramic. That junction is very well maintained. There shouldn't be any stress concentration on that particular junction. If there is any stress concentration on that particular junction, the chances of ceramic fracture is more. So after or during trial, you are supposed to check the bite with an articulating paper, whether the bite comes on that area. If there is a bite on that area, you are supposed to trim the opposing tooth so that there won't be any stress concentration. If so, it causes ceramic fracture. Then if your preparation is not proper and there is increased amount of tooth loss, which can cause unsupported porcelain in the restoration. This unsupported porcelain also can cause fracture in a later stage. Then another reason for ceramic fracture is due to the improper handling of alloy. The alloy should not be contaminated during or before the treatment, before making of the crowns or FPDs. And there is a certain amount of oxide formation on the alloy which helps to adhere the alloy with the ceramic. If the oxide formation is in an excessive manner, that also will lead to ceramic failure in future. Then there are some clinical procedures which can cause ceramic fractures. When your preparation was having undercuts, your preparation should not have any undercut actually, but if your preparation have an undercut, when you try the crown over that preparation, that crown will go and bind on the particular tooth. It will not come out so easily. Then you have to apply some amount of pressure with the help of crown remover in order to take it out. When you do so, there may be chances of increased stress concentration on that particular ceramic area, which can lead to ceramic fracture. So you should be very much careful during that time. Then the impressions what you use, what you send to laboratory also can be distorted. The distorted impression can give a crown which is not properly accurately fit on that particular tooth. When you try to push it to seat it, that time also fracture can happen. So you should be very cautious that time also. Then after cementation, when you try to retrieve it, there will be some amount of cement inside the surface of the crown. So some doctors may try to or tends to clean it with the help of the ultrasonic scaler. When you touch the surface of crown with the scaler, the vibrations of the scaler can itself cause fracture of ceramic. So you should never touch the crown or FPD with the scaler. Then how can you treat it? If the ceramic fracture happens, how will you treat it? The ceramic fracture happens mainly in two ways. Either the first way, I'll tell you in brief how it happens in the first way. That is, the ceramic itself can debonded from the metal. For example, when you consider the molar, if the mesiobuccal cusp area of first molar, just the ceramic has come out and the metal is visible. Metal will be visible in black in color due to oxide layer formation. If that is the case, as there is exposed metal, you are supposed to roughen that metal with intraoral sandblaster. With the help of intraoral sandblaster, you are supposed to make the area of metal rough enough so that there is composite buildup over that area. Then you can use a saline coupling agent for 10 seconds without using the light curing. Then you can use the bonding agent of ceramic over it for 1 minute and you can light cure it. Then if needed, you can apply a layer of opaque. In another case, the mesiobuccal cusp has come out, but you can see some amount of ceramic over there. You can't see the black color. Black color means metal. If there is ceramic over there, that means you can see the white color. That means the bond between the metal and ceramic is intact. The bond between ceramic is broken. So in that case, you cannot use a intraoral sandblaster in order to roughen the ceramic. Then you should use hydrofluoric acid for 30 seconds, then saline coupling agent, then bonding agent of composite. Over that, you can use the appropriate shades of composite till you get a proper restoration corrected. That's how you can treat it. Now coming to aesthetic failure. Aesthetic failure is exactly what it is more important than any other failures, because aesthetic failure, when patient comes to you for the second time, when you try the restoration in patient's mouth, it can be easily visible. Even without trying, you can make out there is aesthetic failure. The main aesthetic failure is due to the poor shade match. If the shade match is done by the doctor, only done by the doctor, if there is any mismatch, that will be the responsibility of the particular doctor. So it's always advisable to take opinion from the patient as well as patient's bystander in case of shade matching. You can take 2 or 3 shades which is almost matching with the patient's tooth, and you can call the patient and the bystander, show them in mirror which all shades you are going to take for this case, and ask them to select the shade. When you do so, you are involving them also in the treatment. So if something goes wrong, they won't blame you much. So it's always better to take their opinion in shade matching. Then another complication can be due to lack of marginal adaptation. Margins of the restoration, as in this case, see here, there is lack of marginal adaptation. The margins of the restoration has to fit exactly with the finish line. If there is any gap, it will look somewhat like this and this. It will be very, very unaesthetic. So the marginal adaptation has to be there before cementation. Then another one more failure is due to, you should read patient's mind before the treatment. You should know their expectations, how much they are expecting with your treatment. So it's always better to have a conversation with the patient regarding the treatment before the beginning of the case. Sometimes the patient may tell you they want a exact crown of the crown which looks like the neighboring tooth in case of crowns. But the word exact, you should know their definition. Each patient may have a different definition for the word exact. Usually what they want a tooth which looks similar to the neighboring tooth. But as you are giving a crown, you cannot give exactly 100% exactly like how it was or how it is in the neighboring tooth, because neighboring tooth is made up of calcium, phosphorus and some inorganic and organic components. But the crown what you are giving is made up of, will be making of entirely different components. So it may mimic to a certain extent, but it will not be the exact replica of the neighboring tooth. That point you should talk to the patient, you should teach the patient, you should make them understand what you are making and what you are providing. So failing to do so also will cause an aesthetic failure. This counseling session has to happen before starting each case. Then another example, when patient comes to you and he or she wants to replace one. Replace means that is root canal treated, and patient wants a crown for that particular tooth. And patient is willing only for metal ceramic crown, and the patient wants the crown exactly look like 2-1. The crown she wants is for 1-1, and it should exactly look like 2-1. And she is ready for only metal ceramic crowns. In this scenario, how much of better work you do, you cannot satisfy that patient, because metal is there in that crown, which will make the crown unaesthetic compared to other metal free crowns. How much of a better you do, you will not be able to satisfy that patient. So you should talk about all these problems to the patient and convince them to go for a metal free crown. Otherwise, when you take up the case during cementation, the patient will be unhappy with your treatment, which will be your failure. So that is all about immediate failures. Then there is something called delayed failure. Delayed failure can be due to, after patient will be happily go from your clinic after the cementation of your framework, then within 1 month they may come back saying there is an unaesthetic appearance for the restoration. It can be due to gingival recession or subpondic tissue shrinkage. Gingival inflammation can happen due to many ways. Usual way, what usually I have seen, due to improper cementation. Sometimes when we seed the crown with the cement inside it, that cement may tend to impinge, or it can tend to go to the cervical area of the gingiva. It may be entrapped over that area. Failing to clean that area can lead to inflammation of gingiva, which in turn causes gingival recession. So always make sure to clean the gingival area where the cement can entrap. Then some patients may tell you to give an FPD just immediately after extraction, just after healing of the extraction socket. Healing can happen within 2 or 3 weeks, but there is something called gingival mucosal recession, or the height of alveolar bone can get reduced. That can happen even after healing. So it's always advisable to wait for 3 months to avoid that gingival level may go down. So you can tell the patient to wait for some more time, so that the gingival level may go down and it becomes stable. Then you can go for a permanent restoration with FPD. Otherwise, you will give a perfect FPD with a perfect pondic. The pondic may be exactly on that particular gingiva at the time of delivery of prosthesis. But after 2 or 3 months, patient may come back to you saying there is a space just below the pondic due to recession. So you should make the patient understand about all these factors before starting the treatment. Then another failure can be due to psychogenic failure. That is, you should know the psychology of patient before starting the treatment. You should talk to patient, you should know their mind before before concluding your treatment plan. You should know what they want. Failing to do so may result in an unhappy patient. That unhappiness in your treatment is a failure. Whatever you do, how much ever perfectly you do, the patient still become unhappy and the patient may still blame you for your work. So you should know the psychological status of each and every patient before starting the treatment. Once you start the treatment, that patient is yours and you are supposed to satisfy that particular patient. If you can't do it, that is your failure. The patient will go to another clinic and talk about bad things regarding you and your treatment. So make sure you know the patient well. If you cannot satisfy the patient, send her for counseling and make the patient better. Do the treatment only after making the patient better. Now coming to the methods, various methods for removing the failed FPDs or crowns. Both have used the same instruments. So the first one is the back action crown remover. This is my favorite instrument in removing crowns and FPDs. Now another one is spring loaded crown remover. Then another one is pneumatic crown remover. I will explain about how back action crown remover works. There is a specific load here which can move from here till here. You are supposed to hold on this weight or load and you are supposed to give strokes. You are trying to pull it out. So the stroke what you give, actually you can control. You will have a control over that particular load. How much ever load you are giving, how much ever the amount of force you are applying. So that's why I like this back action crown remover. You can control, you can regulate the amount of load you are applying, amount of force you are applying on that particular crown. Now coming to the spring loaded crown remover, there is a spring here. You are supposed to pull this plunger so that a specified amount of force will be applied on this tip. That force will be specified. It's the same. How much ever strength you apply on this plunger, that force applied on this tip will be the same. There won't be any change for that. That's why I don't prefer this instrument much. Now coming to the pneumatic crown remover, it uses electricity or the air pressure to work. With the help of electricity or air pressure, it can apply some amount of regulated force on these tips. It is little bit costlier than these instruments. Now another method of removal of crowns or FPDs, it is done by giving vertical grooves on the retainer areas, not on the pondic areas, retainer areas of FPD or the crowns. After making this vertical grooves, you can wedge that area with an instrument so that crown or retainer goes apart or the crown goes apart. If that happens, the chances of cement failure is more. The cement failure can happen easily. Then you can apply any of these instruments in order to pull the FPD or crown out. This is more professional way of removing FPD or crowns. It is always essential to do your RC treated, root canal treated crowns or FPDs in this manner. Without making a groove, if you just try to pull root canal treated crowns or FPDs, what happens is the chance of fracture of tooth is more because root canal treated teeth are weaker than compared to vital teeth. So for all your root canal treated crowns, you are supposed to use this method in a professional way to take it without any discomfort for the patient. But when you use this first methods, all these crown removers, without giving a groove labially, the force acting will be transmitted to the alveolar bone, which will cause discomfort for the patient. But when you try to remove it with a groove on the labial aspect, that is much soothing for the patient. Patient comfort will be more, which is more a professional way than other methods. So always I like to stick on to these methods. First you can give a groove, then try to wedge it, then use your crown removers in order to remove the crowns or FPDs. So that's all about this chapter. I hope you all understood. If you have any doubt, please do contact me without any hesitation. Thank you.